with Walker Buehler on a really special day for his journey back to the mound, which is going to be really fun. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into the wild card chase a little bit, and certain someone I guess you threw your first live BP to, although I'm not sure if you would consider it batting practice. But before all that, we've got good stuff tonight. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I just started on mine. So
yeah, you're doing a great job.
No, Weller, one of my favorites, probably the first one that we've had on here. That's kind of the big collector series, right? So this is the green label, the special reserve, which is kind of the I don't want to say the cheapest or the lowest level because it's fantastic stuff, but in the Weller Rainbow, that's probably the first one that people will have access to. There's a bunch of different ones. They're all kind of different and something everybody should check out, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, Brandon hooked us up. Like, I think we're at the point where we've all got it. Peter might still be waiting, but Brandon got us good to go. Brandon Danley at Sazerac. So thank you very much to Buffalo Trace and to Brandon for that. So that was big time. I've heard about the like mystique of Weller, I guess. We're gonna do Blanton's, I'm sure, for a special occasion. Maybe it's Walker Buehler's return to the mound, but this is a pretty special one too, man. Today's a big day, huh? What's going on?
Difficult to find this one. I got a funny story on this. So a lot of people probably 15 years ago from Kentucky will tell you that you could get this bottle for $15, basically anywhere. And it kind of had this little cult following and a lot of people that would only drink Weller and whatever. And then it just kind of became this thing. Last year at our charity event, we auctioned off a single barrel of it, of the blue label, for $50,000.
Okay. And so how many bottles does a barrel make?
That's in between 160 and 220.
Dude. That's lasted me a long time. For a while.
But that's the kind of following that it has. You know, typically Weller on the secondary market, that green bottle is probably going to go around $100.
Yep.
The other ones are going to start going up, some of them to about $1,200 a bottle, probably.
Listen, man, we're not kicking gift horses in the mouth right now. We're really appreciating it.
I'm trying to give a nice synopsis of what we've got going.
So what's like the biggest like fundamental difference? Because I'm drinking the green label Wellers right now. It's very good. It's probably some of the best bourbon I've had, which is not saying much, but it's very good. Like, what's the fundamental difference between the green label and then some of the more expensive ones?
Yeah, so obviously age is going to be the first one. The one thing I will say about Weller in general is you'll see on the front it says the original wheated bourbon. So a lot of the bourbon that I like is wheated. Makers is a wheated bourbon. Weller is probably the wheated bourbon. It's just how much they put in the mash, similar to if you have a rye, right? But rye is kind of its own category, and wheated is kind of a subcategory of kind of more traditional bourbon. I personally like them better. I think they're a little seemingly crisper to me in the flavor. Similar, a rye will do that sometimes, but I just like the flavor of the wheated one better. And Weller 12, which is the black label, is probably my favorite bourbon in the world. I would say tentatively, but I'm not wrong in saying it.
Got you.
Weller, I'm looking it up right now.
Another rabbit hole to go down if you so choose, much like the adapting price point of Weller. I went down that rabbit hole about a year ago in regards to lobster. You know, lobster was like super accessible, really low price point. And this is, 100 years ago or so, but it's jumped because it got that type of mystique around it, probably much like Weller.
Yep. Yeah, it's in the bourbon thing, you'll see that not as often. Weller's probably the biggest rise from not being a very expensive bottle to, like, if you still find it for retail, that's a $30 bottle of bourbon. So you're talking maybe $1 more than Buffalo Trace or $3, whatever it is at a liquor store. But yeah, it's hard to find, and kind of nowadays you kind of got to know some people and, hey, will you save me one if you get any blah, 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 especially the upper echelon ones. They have an orange label that's a single barrel that's pretty strong. And I have there's one called the Weller 17. So the 5 kind of main names in Buffalo Trace, they came out with what's called an antique collection. And so I was lucky enough to get the Weller antique, and that's about as the first time I tried it, we were at a tasting there, and the way it was described was if the meteor was coming down, right, and you had one more night, what would you drink? And Weller 17 is probably up there. It's pretty spicy, pretty hot, but it's delicious stuff.
Yeah, see, mine's Michelob Ultra. I'm watching my figure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I want to go down looking hot.
You're gonna save a little coin on the casket or what?
A little bit, teensy bit. Hey, big day for you today, man. You are you're not flying anywhere. You're gonna drive, and you're gonna do something pretty cool at Chase Field, yeah?
Yeah, well, I know this is coming out on Wednesday. However, for all you people out there, I'm not drinking bourbon the night or the day that I go and throw to hitters, but tomorrow. So today, but tomorrow, but today, I am throwing to hitters at Chase Field. So that will be a big milestone for me.
So how do you kind of get ready for that beyond what you've already done? Like what's the biggest change in terms of the bullpens that you're throwing versus somebody standing in? Because I know you push yourself otherwise. So what's the difference maybe mentally?
Yeah, I mean, until you get on a 5-day rotation, there, for me at least, there's not as much of the, oh, it's my start day, right? I think I kind of treat today as if I have a big day, but not a start day tomorrow. And these lives will kind of not be quite as distance in days as a start would be. So there'll be 3 or 4 days in between. Probably at times 2, 3 would be typical. So you're just kind of building these innings. But yeah, it's a big day. Obviously, doing a chase, doing it against some of my teammates. It can get a little interesting when you're throwing to kids at the Arizona League or whatever, because they're so aggressive that you almost end up getting into some really weird situations, and the outcomes aren't what you think they probably would be. You get ambushed, or you'll throw a bad pitch, and they're so aggressive that a pro won't swing at a certain pitch. And so I just kind of I feel good to the point where I want to know where my stuff is at, and even less so that what they're hitting, more so I want to pick their brains when we're done, right? I think that's the biggest thing. And even a lot of the bullpens that I put on the internet or whatever have been with guys standing in, and it's for that reason, right? Just to say, hey, like, did you see this? Did you see that? How did this one act? Because the numbers can only tell you so much, right? You can have the craziest slider in the world by the numbers, but if they see it right out of your hand, it's kind of useless in some form. And yeah, I'm excited to get some guys that are actively trying to move and make a move on the ball to let me know what they see.
Is there anything specific or like in particular that you're looking to hone in on or kind of get some specific feedback on, or are you just interested to get that feedback across the entire arsenal as you throw?
Both. I mean, there's some things that I know are probably pretty similar in terms of, like, my curveball, for example. If the numbers are the same, it's typically going to be reacted to pretty similarly. I'm trying to throw a little bit harder slider, a little bit more downer instead of the big sweeper as much. So I haven't seen a hitter swing at that. So that one will be interesting. And then I think the fastball as well is a big thing. You just kind of want to see if the numbers that you're getting are telling the whole story. If it feels fast for 92 or 94 or 96 or whatever it is. Does it feel slow? Are they seeing it? I think you can get lulled into throwing a bunch of bullpens and the ball is out in front of you the whole time, and you don't even realize that a hitter can see it the whole time, because your catcher is likely feeling good about it because they can see the ball the whole time, right? And it's kind of the last thing you want a hitter to do. So a lot of little things like that. I mean, at the end of the day, you're trying to build up and feel good and feel healthy. And I know Connor, our pitching coach, got interviewed or whatever and said it looked right to him and kind of more like the old me in terms of the intent, but you never really know. And a guy standing behind you can't tell you the whole story either. So definitely some encouraging stuff that we've been going through the past couple of weeks, but you won't know the whole story until I throw it to a hitter in a major league game, but you can start getting kind of puzzle pieces and start figuring it out as well as trying to build up.
Well, and some of that stuff that you're probably looking for to hear from hitters will only come from guys that are really comfortable in their situation, and those are major leaguers. So kind of revisiting that point, not like, dragging the younger guys, but I mean, they're trying to prove themselves. Like, hey, if I get a knock against Walker Buehler, I feel good to a certain extent, right? But major leaguers are almost gonna, I don't know, see you for, just a chance to see more pitches before they hop in a game that night, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that I've explained breaking balls in particular to younger guys or guys that I've talked to is like in the major leagues, it has to move the same amount, but it has to happen way later. And so
Yeah.
I think you can kind of, if you think about 60 feet, 6 inches, and, in college, you can probably get a ball to start moving at 40 feet. And in high A, double A, it's 45, and double A, it's 55, and you start, or 50, whatever, you start creeping it back. And so I've kind of always thrown a lot of bullpens at really short distances, maybe 50 feet, to try and get the ball to not move. So I'll clip it, know that it's going to move, see it start, but wanting to tighten everything up. And that's kind of been how I've always tried to figure that out. Even today, I don't really throw bullpens ever to a full length, 60 feet, 6 inches. I'll have the guy sit right on the plate because I want to know where those pitches are moving through the zone, right? I think that comes with a little bit of, I know that I can typically throw strikes. And so I'm not just trying to land everything in the zone. I kind of want to know where it's crossing more so than where it would be received to be called a ball or strike. And I think that's, those two things, having that little 4 feet contrast will show you like, all right, before my bullpen, I just threw 4 of these sliders and they barely moved. But then when the catcher gets them, they're low. So then you got to readjust your sights now that you know that maybe it's late enough or has the action that you want once you're back there, right? But you can also trick yourself. You get guys that sit way too far back. I can throw a breaking ball and it can bounce, but guess what? Like that one at the plate is middle down, and some of these guys will hit that thing 450 feet. So I think for me, it's all very intentional and very trying to orient what I see and what I feel to what I'm trying to do on any given throw, I guess.
How much video do you watch in terms of going back on the bullpens, and even when you're healthy and pitching previously? How much did you watch back of maybe your games and footage that way?
Yeah, I would say I probably only watch video during the game most often. If something's kind of awry or I'm trying to, if something feels incorrect or doesn't feel good, or a hitter's not reacting the way that I think they should, think I made a really good pitch and whatever, then I'll watch that stuff. But for me, it's more now with the data stuff is getting feedback on the data to match up with the ones that I feel good on, right? So
yeah,
I may throw 3 fastballs and ask the guy which was the best if I felt 3 different things, right? And then you can kind of, that's how I use the new data stuff, is trying to hone in on certain feelings, because I'm going to feel it out there. And if I don't know the correct feeling, right, you can throw 3 balls and they can all feel good and all feel good differently. And so trying to pick the one that creates kind of what I want is my kind of, I really hate the word like process, but that's my process, I guess.
Yeah, it's probably the checkpoints that you're trying to hit, right? It's thoughts that you want to have at any given time.
Yeah, and I know we're going to talk about the TPI. That's like a big reason I went there, right? Is I threw 10 balls with my normal, everything feels normal delivery, right?
Yeah.
And then Tom House and I have been kind of talking through some different cues and things we're trying to figure out. So I'll throw 5 with that cue and 5 with this cue and see if my body reacts different. And I think for me, coming away from that, I now have like the 1 or 2 cues that are more effective than the other 2 or 3 that we've been talking about.
Yeah. We're going to get to that right now, but this is dynamite, man. Like this is number
it's
1.
Really good. This is definitely the best we've had, I think, on here.
Yeah,
it's absolutely fantastic. I will tell you, the Blantons is at the same level. It's a different kind of thing. It's kind of like, do you like an Aaron Judge kind of player? Do you like an Arias kind of player? Like they're they're
You win
both
either way.
good, right?
Yeah.
But they're different strokes, I guess.
Yeah.
Jack, putting you on the spot. Speaking of different strokes, what makes this one good to you?
I don't know. I guess like it's a little bit more subdued. But like subdued might not be
It's
the right
smoother.
word.
It's definitely like it's just I don't
Do
know how to
you
describe
do you
it.
guys taste the little like crispness that I'm talking about?
Yes. Yes. Definitely
Yeah.
do. But it's also
It
like
doesn't like smack you in the face as hard, but it's a good kick, but like it doesn't linger the same way.
Yeah.
and there's a
Some of the
little
I don't-
sweetness that kind of
I
hangs.
would never do it, but I've also heard that Weller is about as good as you can get, like a mixed, like a little flash of something.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, this is numero uno, I think, for me. And I love just like the smoothness of it.
Now let me tell you guys something real quickly here.
Yes.
I will tell you for me, so there's a lot of ways to like do the ice and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
For me, my favorite is ice in a Yeti cup. I've seen you're both rocking glass cups. You're probably getting a little sweat. You're probably getting a lot of ice melt, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've still got like full cubes in there.
Chew.
These guys are
But
bad.
that's the next step, right? You guys might have to get you a little bourbon cup.
Bourbon cup.
Damn.
I didn't know.
Okay.
Okay.
I get
Yeah,
those
there's
on
definitely
Amazon.
Sweat. There's definitely sweat in here.
Yeah. So what happened? But what some people do is there's bourbon rocks, right, where they're physical, like you know,
Mhm.
they look like an ice cube. I have a few at the house. So you put them in the freezer, and then obviously there's no water, right? So you're not diluting it, but you're getting the chill to it.
Yeah.
You know, there's different tiers. I'm in probably tier 3 now.
Okay.
I would say mixing, straight melting ice, and then straight not melting ice.
All right, we're tier 2.
Yeah, tier
we're good.
2.
Is the final
tier two?
boss? Is the final boss neat?
Room temp neat.
Oh,
Room
yeah.
temp
See,
neat.
I'm good. I don't think I enjoyed it at that point.
Yeah, but listen, man, if you ever find yourself in, you know, a dark, dimly lit bar, right, and you're sitting across from, you know, somebody impactful, you'd like to be able to order
Yes.
something neat, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's a big power
And
play.
so
yeah.
it's like having it's having the big gun, but not always using it, you know.
Got you. Keep it in your back pocket. I
Yeah,
understand.
I need that.
Yeah.
I need that in my
It's
bag.
also what you guys will learn if you're similar to me is that if you have a situation where you can't have 4 of these, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having one neat it's a governor for yourself.
Got
Yeah.
it.
I was gonna say this is the fastest I've ever finished one. Like
Yeah.
I don't even have it near me to be able to refill it. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Get yourself
Wow.
another pour, man.
I can't leave.
Want to jump to the Tom House thing and TPI, your
Yeah.
time in San Diego. You threw to somebody in San Diego, and it just happened to be the world number 1 and the guy that wore the green jacket. That was kind of a weird Twitter video to come across, but weird in the best way. Here we got Jon Rahm just standing in for Walker Buehler as he throws a bullpen.
Yeah, well, I was at kind of the premier golf institute in the world, right? I think they did a fantastic job with the baseball stuff, and we actually use the same system, right? The same straps and all that stuff that they hook you up to, but it is the Titleist Performance Institute, and so a lot of golf going around there. Not a ton of baseball at the moment. I know they're kind of taking a foray into it. They're building a big baseball facility, and I'm excited to go back there at some point and kind of see where I'm at relative to Friday and also just in general, because you come away with so much data when you do that kind of stuff that for me, data's really hard when it's that much when you only have one, right? If you have 2, 3, 4, you can kind of start creating a picture or understand, oh, I've been training a different way, or I've been thinking something different, and is this leading to anything worthwhile, right? But I got to watch Rahm hit a few balls, watch him warm up, which was pretty cool, and then he went in there and took some swings. I think he's probably a little bit further along in that kind of data compilation journey, I guess. I think for them it's a lot more about when they're right, getting that on data, and for us it's a lot of when something's going wrong, and we can't fix it, right? Like there's times, as you know, last year, early in the season, there was a lot of things that I have felt that I wasn't feeling, and then I couldn't recreate them, right? So that's when like I'll go get the data and say like, hey, something X, Y, and Z isn't going correctly. And it's also, for me, it's a lot more of a not playful, but like kind of what we're talking about, different cues and seeing if something gets me closer, or, you know, I guess it is kind of a playful thing of figuring out, well, if I do this and it's really extreme feeling to me, maybe it's not as extreme in the data, and I can kind of push that until it feels normal or whatever. But I think this one on Friday was probably the first time I've been on a full biomechanic lab and felt pretty good. So that's going to be a cool kind of data set to have. And you know, we also found some stuff that I think is a little bit inefficient that maybe we can figure out. So yeah, it was overall a pretty cool day and a beneficial day for me.
Real quick, I've got a Tom House question, because I was reading about how Tom House kind of helped Jose Barrios this offseason. And Barrios is a great example of like how paying attention to how you work and how the body was working, like they altered the throw a little bit for Barrios is what I read. And that guy went from what, a mid fives, a high fives last year to now rocking a low 3 and looking like he was absolutely worthy of that extension that he signed with Toronto. So I'm just curious, like, and you don't need to get into specifics with you, what does Tom House do for pitchers that are some of the best in the planet at what they do?
Right. So I guess to kind of go back to the origin of that relationship, right? Well, first off, my grandfather, I took some pitching lessons when I was 9 or 10 years old, and my grandfather ordered the Tom House videos, which I've let him know that, you know, I'm 29 and I was 10 years old, and he's been doing it that long, and he must be kind of old and, you know, whatever. But no, I think a lot of the fundamental principles that most of us learned that were advanced from pick up your leg and throw it, like every little league coach, right? I think every dad that was trying to help their kid or grandfather or whoever it was, that was kind of the gold standard for a long time. And in talking to, I've been probably going to be working with, talking to the people from the Mustard app, which is a phone app that can kind of give you some data points and some actually really useful ones, even from little league to where I'm at. And so in talking to them, I got connected with Tom, who's a big part of their kind of, not only of their app, but kind of their algorithm and what they're looking for and what they're trying to accomplish and coach kids to do. And so it worked out really well that you know, we started getting on the phone, and I'm hoping we started recording some of those, which should be pretty cool when they come out. I think I'm trying to show like kind of the things that we're doing and the things that I'm trying to figure out. But you know, we've probably done that for 4 or 5 weeks or 6 weeks or so, and so to be in there in person and have the voice and the one rep instead of one bullpen, right? I think that kind of feedback and quick feedback is kind of what I operate on, and being able to experiment and kind of give him what I feel, what he sees, and get a second set of eyes, right? Because I think to be as good as you can be, right, you largely have to be your own pitching coach. And I think my coach at Vanderbilt was a big proponent of that, and figuring out, I can give you all the puzzle pieces, but you're going to have to put it together. And so I think our guys do a great job of that in general, but I'm hurt. I'm not with the team. And so to have an outlet like that to kind of bounce stuff off of once a week has been huge for me. And then you take that a step further to where he's right there. And can see it live and see it in the fashion that he would want to, I think is nothing but beneficial. And, you know, obviously everyone respects and knows that name in terms of pitching. But also in talking to him, there's been a lot of like the guy's still learning and still altering kind of what he wants and what he sees. And it's pretty impressive to watch a guy go, you know, from a lot of different thoughts on pitching. And I think it takes a lot of humility, right? Because you've made all this, you've been known as this pitching wizard, and to still be learning new ways, I think is incredible. So It was really cool for me in a lot of different ways, and also beneficial because I still think he's one of the better pitching minds around.
So I think thirst for knowledge would be the number one answer to this question. But my question was going to be, you have those pitching minds that are so well respected, and you kind of mentioned you get the puzzle pieces, and then it's kind of up to you to put it together. What makes the best pitching minds so good? Is it the way that they're able to translate what their thoughts to you, the way they're able to pick different things up for different types of pitchers? Like, what is it that makes the best pitching minds and best pitching coaches just that good and so clear cut?
I mean, there's different kinds now, right? I think for a long time it was all mechanical coaches and coaches that were teaching mechanics or different ways to achieve certain goals or whatever. And I had that in the big leagues, and Rick Honeycutt, and he was one of my favorite people I've ever been around in terms of very, very calming and I didn't do scouting. He scouted for me and told me what I needed to do. And my delivery, I'd say, hey, I find myself asking those guys more, why is this happening? And they have like well, I think you're a little forward or you're a little this, but it's small tweaks, and they're giving you things in bite-sized pieces enough that you can do it on the next throw. And then you kind of have the modern pitching coach, which really you need two, and some guys are both, right? You need like the biomechanic guy, which is the same old school thing, except now I know all this data about myself, and I want to change this and that, and this is why my elbow hurts, or this is why my hip hurts, or whatever it is, right? And you have the guys that can analyze that stuff, and then you also have the guys that can say, well, we need to get your hand in a little different position because on the TrackMan you're doing this and the spin and whatever, right? And so the modern pitching coach in a lot of ways is a couple people.
Yeah.
And you see it, we have Mark Pryor and we have Connor McGinnis, and they each have their strengths and game planning and whatever. So it's really a threefold job, right? It's getting guys to be efficient with their delivery, getting their hand to be efficient to create the movement that they want, and then getting the game plan efficient to the strengths and the weaknesses of the pitcher and the hitter. That's the big three of being a major league pitching coach, which is something that I feel like being a major league pitcher is being super proficient in a few of those, or at least being open to, or being really good at certain things. Like Clayton can repeat his delivery like no one I've ever seen, right? Like I've watched him throw bullpens for 7 years, and you can walk up and there's 1 foot mark where he lands. So there you can see every cleat, and it looks like he threw one time, right? And he'll throw a 30 pitch bullpen. That's biomechanic and the awareness of his body. But I think for a long time he probably couldn't have told you why his fastball was so good or why his slider was so good or whatever, right? So you kind of fill up the different cups in different ways, and I've kind of always been that weird in between, and I've just kind of stayed trying to elevate everything at the same time, right? I'll go watch guys on TrackMan, watch them in my eyes, see why it works, watch other pitchers, see what the numbers are, and then go learn the biomechanic and then try and execute it, right? Like that's probably the more modern way to do it, but there are still guys on the polar ends of, I'm just trying to throw to this vert number. And then there's guys that are just trying to be really powerful, like, and throw the ball the same way every way or every time. So I think it can be done every way, but I think reflected in the way that I throw, where I throw every pitch, like I'm trying to grab every little piece of everything I can.
I was going to say there are probably a lot of guys that don't need to know the answer to the question why with a lot of their stuff. It's
Right.
like, oh, that did this. Nice. But you are so clearly a why guy. And I'm sure that you share a clubhouse and you've seen around baseball, like guys that just don't need to know the answer why. It's like, okay, my stuff is good. It's getting people out. And that's kind of about it. Right.
Yeah. See, I 100% understand why you would have that perception. For me, it's all about the feel. So that's where I think that's where most of us agree. Like if I don't feel it, I can't keep doing it. And so for me, it's like, oh, biomechanically teach me something. I felt that. That's great. I can now hold on to that. TrackMan or whatever or whatever, performance of the pitch, right? I can feel that. I can hold on to that. But I can do both those things at a high level and not feel it and know that it's like a fleeting thing, or I just clipped it, or I just happened to get in a spot or whatever. Right. So I think those are the bricks, right, of biomechanics and pitching to a number. And then the mortar is feeling it, right? Like I can build this thing up high, but one wind, that thing's coming down. But
Yep.
if you can get the feel of it continuously, you can kind of, I can't believe I just did a brick and mortar, idea,
Yep.
but it is.
It
I
allows
don't
you to
know
always
how
like
else to-
to find it again, right? Because once you know the feel, it's easier to get back
Right.
to that and what you want to do. And
Right.
the same
Like
thing for hitters too.
Kirsch every spring will go through and say, I can't feel my slider. And he'll be throwing good sliders. So you just can't feel it the same way. And for me, like it's even like it's the most abstract thing I've heard in pitching. For me, I try and throw shapes with my arms. So most people say, oh, I'm trying to throw a shape of a pitch. I'm trying to make my arm into a certain shape. That's what I feel, right?
Yeah.
So you can think of like a fastball. I try and throw like a mountain, right? I'm trying to climb and get to the top and throw it down. My curveball, I'm trying to throw like a wave. I want my elbow to go and the hand to kind of like be a wave behind it, right? But if I don't feel those things, then I don't know how to adjust the same way that I do when I do feel those certain things.
Can I just say you totally have a children's book on your hands here? It's like throw a wave, like an instructional pitching children's book. You've totally got that right there.
Yeah, I get it. I wish I could teach a kid that, but I've tried to explain this to like coaches and players, and like it's not.
It doesn't resonate the same way.
Well, it's just not something that other people really think about it that way. But for me, I honestly think being a little kid that like a smaller kid that was trying to figure out different ways to do it, I had to find like more singular ways to do things, right? Like a lot of my friends threw a lot harder than me and they could just throw it harder or softer or harder or soft. For me, I had to like try and figure it out. And so I think that's just how I don't know if I got a weird brain or whatever it is, but yeah, like I won't tell you I can really throw a pitch until I have a shape built into how I want to throw it.
So I know it's different probably for pitcher to pitcher, but let's say you get in a little bit of a jam, pitching coach comes out. What are they talking about with you? I think that's one of the most common fan questions here. Of course,
Yeah.
sometimes it's the game plan for the hitter, but let's say it's you against yourself right now, and the
Yeah.
pitching coach is coming out there. It's like, what are they trying to? Are they trying to help you find those cues? Are they trying to help you identify what feel you need to find? Like, what is the pitching coach coming out there to say to you?
I mean, I think it's dependent on what level you're talking, right? The high school pitching coach should not be doing anything other than trying to like relax the guy.
Mm-hmm.
My college pitching coach would come out and have a joke or a quip or a whatever, and then kind of an idea of what we wanted to do. Because in college, there is scouting reports for sure, but it's not like it is in professional baseball.
Right.
So if you come out and you're like, oh, we got to do this, and this, then you're risking giving that guy that's not ready for all that five steps when you're really just going out there to make sure he does the first one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the college coach should come out and tell some joke or something he knows about you or whatever, and then tell you the first pitch and then move on. Now, I think as you go through the professional levels, you end up with more of just the scouting report. And like, as weird as it sounds, like the most prideful I feel is when they're like, hey, you got this, big boy. Like, kind of like, you're a professional. Here's the report. Go do that. Like, all this, whatever shit has happened, like, pick your leg up, be you, be yourself, throw these pitches. Because I think at the end of the day, we're playing a children's game, right? But we've got like some of the biggest stakes in the world. Like we get to live this crazy life in terms of, financial independence and all that stuff because we throw a ball. And sometimes it's not just a children's game. Sometimes it is like, I want to buy a house back home. And if I strike this guy out, maybe I can do that. Right. Like, but that's the mental game that you play with yourself. We play 162 games. I'm throwing 32 games. I've faced 30 different shortstops, right? Like I'm facing this guy from this team, and how do I get that little thing? Well, if I punch this guy out in this spot and I don't give up 2 runs, then you know what? Maybe I make this an arb, or maybe like you can build your own stakes however far you want to do it. And for some guys, and I think I'm probably one of those guys, less so the monetary thing, but just the like, this guy's not an all-star. This guy's not that, like, I can go do this, you know? And so I think there's just learning the ticks of each different guy. But I think in pro ball, you would hear a lot of, all right, it's this average, this slug on this pitch and this zone. If we get ahead early, it's slider over curveball, it's cutter, fine, 2C. It's all of that. It's kind of all detail. Because the assumption is that everything from am I freaking out to can I execute is taken care of. You're supposed to be a Major League Baseball player and a Major League starter. And so there's less of that kind of mental game, right? Of my college coach telling me that I looked tiny in the weight room the day before, right? Like,
yeah.
But if, you know, it's a different, you're at a different point in your life and you're kind of playing for a different thing.
So it's less about trying to get you or trying to figure out why you got into the jam that you're in. It's just, here's the path out. Let's try and come out of it. Because at this point, you're a major leaguer, you know why you loaded the bases up or why you're in the spot that you're in, basically.
Right. I mean, I think less like, you think about the mistakes that you make as a college player, right? Or a high school player, even more specifically. You're playing your rival, right? And you're amped up and you're trying to throw really hard. And guess what? You're drifting and everything's going higher. Like my mistakes now in a major league game are not going to be high arm side every throw.
Yeah. Yeah.
My rookie year in the playoffs against Ronald Acuna, which everyone has shown me this video 1,000 times. They were all up. I was amped up. He's one of the better players in the world. He's a rookie. I'm a rookie. We're in the playoffs. I kept missing up, right? But they weren't arm side. Those are just over accelerated throws. My delivery is not bad because I'm not missing this way. I'm missing at the top. I walked the pitcher in that game, for Christ's sakes. But at the end of the day, like, nobody came out there. Like, I've had a good rookie year. People like, you trust me to go get these guys out. It's 5 straight fastballs. I threw the 3-0. It was up, but they called it a strike. The next one I threw a 3-1 right down the middle as hard as I could because I have a good fastball. I believe in my delivery. I've proven for 22 games that I can get people out, and it is what it is. I give up a home run. It's fine. But in college, they have 12 games a year, 14 games a year. These coaches at this point in the season have seen other guys start 32 games and seen me start 23 games or 24, whatever it is. Like, it's such a different thing. You watch a guy throw 25 games than it is 12. And there's such a belief in professional baseball of, if you're a guy, there's such a belief in you because it is so difficult to be a starting pitcher or a reliever or whatever it is over the course of 162. It's so different than 64 games. Mm-hmm. So in college or high school, when you play 30, think about that. We play our entire high school career every year.
Yeah.
Right. So that coach doesn't need to come out there and tell you like, hey man, like you're pretty good. Like you're going to make varsity next year. You don't need all of that. Right.
Yeah.
So that's probably the most representative conversation of like where you're at in terms of them believing in your general ability to like throw quality pitches, I guess. Kind of a letdown for this whole rant that I've gone on, but like that's the feeling, right? Is if you come out and just tell me a scouting report, you believe that I can execute that.
Yeah.
If you come out there and like try and fix my mentality, like then especially now, if somebody comes out there and tries to like break the ice with me, like I don't think you believe that I can do this in my current mental state.
Mm-hmm.
And that is now extremely scary to me. as opposed to back in the day, that was like what got me like back to, okay.
Dude, I love where this went. I think I'm speaking for Aram too.
Yeah,
Like,
that makes a lot of sense.
this was a really cool pitching conversation. So really happy that you went on that rant. It's not a rant. Like, this is gold for people.
No, I feel like I won't stop talking, and I get like this when it's happened at TPI. We were talking after, and I just like it was hard for me to stop, but that's how I work, and people that are around me a lot will tell you that this is kind of when I'm like in something, I can kind of go.
So I know we've mentioned your friend at Red Vanley, and I think they're going to become our friends too. And I was talking to Jim at Red Vanley, and he said this guy so clearly loves baseball after a round of golf with you. And I was like, yeah, man. Like, I think everybody's picking that up. So, I mean, dude, you're keying our audience into you loving baseball like this, and you being, like, obviously you've got a bunch of other stuff going on, and I think our audience understands that, but you being obsessed with getting people out, getting better to this extent is like so cool for us to see. And I know for our audience to see too. And I hope you know that.
Yeah, well, man, the way I think about it is I think it's hard enough to be really good at anything in life, number one, and especially in athletics, and you start boiling this whole thing down. Like, if you can't like obsess over it in a weird way when you find the one thing that you're really good at, then I think you really have a ceiling on how good you can be at it. Like, listen, I'm a 6 foot, 185 now. I'm like 200 pounds. I've gained all this weight, but for a lot of my career, I was 6'1", 185-pound kid from Kentucky that was starting playoff games for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Like, if you can't obsess over that, like, I don't know, like, how do I get better at that? Like, I've got all this shit that's being handed to me because I can throw this ball where I want it or how I want it or whatever. And through the ups and downs of it, like, at the end of the day, like, that's what I get to do for a living. And that's so like crazy to me. My boys from Eastern Little League they played today. I don't know if they won or not. I didn't get to see the game, but they may be going to Omaha or not Omaha. Maybe getting to go to Williamsport. I don't know, but like, I was that kid, and that was like, there were years where that was like the peak of what I thought athletically I would do. And then the next year I did this, and the next year, but at one point that was the thing. And then 2 years ago, like, man, I thought I was one of the best starting pitchers in baseball. And so that kind of shift, I think this obsession that drives me nuts, because I know I drive other people when I talk nuts sometimes. But like, I wouldn't trade that for anything, right? Like, I've driven Kirsch nuts the other day when I was in LA, because I've been cooped up in here. I couldn't shut the fuck up. I just couldn't.
Well, I was gonna say you found the perfect place, because this is exactly the audience that we have here is exactly wanting you to not shut the fuck up. So like, it works out really well. And neither do we. And the one thing I will say, I think that was pretty like interesting to take away from that is it's applicable to so many different people. You don't have to be one of the best baseball throwers in the world to be obsessed. And I think obsessed has like a negative connotation, but it shouldn't. To just be passionate and overly passionate and desperate to be the best at what you're good at. Like, everybody's good at, like you said, like different things. And if you're obsessed with the thing that you're good at, you can become one of the best at that thing. And I think that's applicable to anybody in any context, whether you throw 97 or not. So
no, I agree. I mean, listen, if people out there, like, if you're selling insurance, like, the more you know about the way that the people all around you think, right? Like, selling insurance where I'm from is different from it's all the same shit. You just have to, I think for me, learning and trying to learn every different way to apply certain things. I think that's the only way to simultaneously raise your floor and your ceiling, right? And so for me, the more I know, the more that I put into the cog that somehow is my body now, which if you would ask me 10 years ago, I'm like, what do you talk like? You're going to go be a lawyer. Like, that's your only option. Yeah. And then 10 years later, it's all about learning how to make my fingers do this much more turn at as fast as I like. But that's what I figured out, right? Or I learned how to be obsessed with. And And I think watching some of the guys that I've gotten to play with, the older guys, they're all about raising the floor. They've always like Kirsch, Rich Hill, all these guys have always talked to me about, listen, your curveball is only as good as the worst one you throw, right? Like Rich Hill's his curveball is good every time he throws it. Clayton's slider is good every time he throws it. And so like raising this floor is something that is the old school way, right? Like you watch Tom Glavine or all these old guys, like their stuff was exceptional on certain days, but their bad ones were still good. They were still 6-on-4 and they still kept their team in it. And that's something that's probably a little bit lost today, I think, but something that I've embraced forever. And I've also kind of embraced the new school of like how high can we ramp the ceiling and how good can I be on any given day? And for me, that's kind of been the thing. Now I've blown up 2 elbows and I've been pursuing everything good I can. And maybe I could have had 4 gears instead of 6, but I don't think that's really how I'll ever operate.
Okay, we're not talking wild card, man. This is a perfect spot to end. Like, what a fun conversation. And I mean, you say you've blown up 2 elbows. Like, you're facing live hitters today at Chase Field or tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, we know you're drinking Weller, but you're facing them tomorrow. Like, this is cool, man. And we can't wait to see you do what you're amazing at in short order. So this is great. We'll save the wild card shit for next week, man. Walker Buehler.
Nobody wants it anyways. No one
No
wants the
one
wild
wants
card
it.
in the NL anyways. Dude.
People want that. So yeah, we'll deal with that next week. Walker Buehler, you're awesome, man. Appreciate you. And we'll talk to you next week.